Hey there, it's Jen. I am going to do turkey number 7, or rather turkeys. You'll have to excuse my wet hair. I've been working on other stuff and just took a quick shower, so here I am, wet hair and all. Uh, so these turkeys, there are 3 of them. They are Mark Zuckerberg, Sheryl Sandberg, and Campbell Brown. And you'll have to bear with me because there are a lot of different facets to this, a lot of different things I'll go into, but it all ties together. I'm sure you're aware that we have been very highly suppressed by Facebook, but it's not just us. A lot of news organizations have, a lot of people have, and that seems to be by design because Facebook, under Campbell Brown, who is heading up a lot of the news feed, news sort of partnerships, those decisions. She seems to be of the mindset that only widely trusted news organizations deserve to be seen in people's feeds, and that's a big problem because what is widely trusted? You know, you might say the New York Times is widely trusted. However, under Judith Miller, they helped lead us to the Iraq War under false pretenses. So that was fake news, if you want to talk about fake news. So there are a lot of problems here. There are a lot of news organizations who are kissing the hand of Facebook in order to try to be seen. Apparently Campbell Brown has these parties where in Tribeca, in her fancy Tribeca apartment, where people like BuzzFeed Ben attend and try to suck up to Campbell Brown so that their news organizations are seen in news feeds. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. If you aren't familiar with Campbell Brown, and I'm starting with her because she's kind of like the lowest on this totem pole of Facebook turkeys, but it has great significance and it ties into everything else. Because the point here, one of the main points, who the heck is Facebook to determine what is fake news, who should be seen in news feeds, which news organizations are not fake news and which ones are. And we'll get into some of the latest scandal as well because it's shocking. Facebook actually hired Definers, which is a Republican conservative group that essentially tried to use propaganda against George Soros because George Soros said basically that Facebook was getting too big for its britches. And so Facebook wanted to know if there was any financial incentive for him to say those things rather than it just being the truth. So Facebook is a mess right now. Zuckerberg is a mess. Sandberg is a mess. And Campbell Brown is one big giant mess. If you don't know about Campbell Brown, you might have seen her as a CNN anchor years ago. Her ratings were not great, so her program didn't stick around that long. But she was a CNN anchor, and she actually, on her way out from being a CNN anchor, once her show was canceled, she smeared everyone else in her time slot. And I think it was like Keith Olbermann and I don't remember who. It was Nancy Grace and Keith Olbermann and someone else. I can't remember exactly who. But she was like, in this lineup, I can't shed my journalistic skin, basically implying that all the rest were bad reporters who were not real journalists. At that time, Keith Olbermann was kind of okay. So that was kind of funny. She seems to think very highly of herself. She's also married to Dan Senor, who is one of the architects behind the Iraq War, one of the top propagandists, a really bad guy. If you guys aren't familiar with those neocons, and actually, I have a book here, Neoconned Again, that talks all about this sort of thing. If you aren't familiar with that, I highly recommend Robbie Martin's documentaries because he goes into Dan Senor and friends. They're bad dudes. Anyway, she's married to Dan Senor. She's worked very closely with Betsy DeVos in the past on school choice reform and anti-teachers union stances. So she's a real winner. I have no idea, people think of Facebook as being this liberal place, liberal site or whatever. There are even rumors of Zuckerberg running under the Democratic ticket in 2020. Hopefully that does not happen, because there are so many reasons why that shouldn't happen. But here's Campbell Brown, who is heading up the news outreach or news partnerships program. So she's a real piece of work. I'm actually going to be a little bit unprofessional. I can't put up stuff on my screen yet. I'm going to learn how to do that like Jordan does. But for now, I'm going to read a bit about Campbell Brown and recent comments that she has made. So let's see here. So basically, they're changing the news feed sort of algorithm, and they say it's because they want to boost the quality of news content. So before, the rankings of news content and other content used to be based on how many people were sharing it, how much interaction it was getting, things like that. So now she's saying it's not going to be a quantity thing, like number of shares, number of likes, things like that. It's going to be a quality thing where they have these specific partnerships with sites like the Washington Post, New York Times, what they deem to be widely acceptable forms of news. Right now they're kind of experimenting. And one thing that she said that kind of ruffled a lot of people's feathers is, if you're a publisher who feels Facebook isn't good for your business, you shouldn't be on Facebook. So instead of working with publishers truly, even small publishers, niche publishers, she's saying, if you don't like it, there's the door. Meanwhile, Facebook, as terrible as it is one of the only ways to reach a wide audience on the internet. So that's not really a good or acceptable answer at all. Facebook has also said they'll start polling users about which media outlets they trust the most, and would begin favoring news from broadly trusted sources on its site. Brown also said news organizations should be thinking differently about their relationship with Facebook. This is not us stepping back from news. This is us changing our relationship with publishers, aka the publishers who show up to her Tribeca mixers. This is about Facebook doing something it's never done before, having a point of view and leaning in. Oh, they really love that. Leaning into quality news. Not all news is created equal. The way we're thinking about it now, this is very early stage. Give a boost to broadly trusted publishers, give a boost to local news publishers, which I don't have a problem with giving a boost to local news publishers. If you're talking about people in their, in their state and they want to hear what's going on in their neighborhood, it makes sense to kind of boost that local news so that they see it. But as far as giving a boost to broadly trusted news organizations, there's no way to define that. And who are they to be defining that at all? So they are actually going to take news content overall down. So instead of it being 5% of overall content in people's news feeds, it's going to go down to 4%. And while that might not sound like a lot, it is. I'm terrible at math, but I think it's around a quarter, is that right, of news posts will not be seen anymore. They go on to say this is not a popularity contest, not who is trusted the most, but those who are broadly trusted by a wide variety of users. So basically, the big guys who already have all the funding, who already have their arm in government propaganda, they're the ones who are going to win. And small news publishers like us, like so many, like Common Dreams or Raw Story and places like that, I don't think their chances are looking good of being seen. And our chances are not looking good at being seen. And we report on real things that are happening in America, and our content can't be seen. Meanwhile, those who led us to the Iraq War, those who are pushing Russian hysteria propaganda like crazy, they're trusted. They're going to be seen. It doesn't make much sense to me. They're also going to work with certain publishers only on a subscription model. So it's basically like the big guys win. We have this very conservative person who has done pretty terrible things. I mean, what kind of person works against teachers' unions? So she's in charge of making these decisions, and it's completely absurd. So Campbell Brown is a giant turkey. She's horrible. If you listen, and we'll try to link to her verbal interview that she did with Recode in this Recode conference, you'll be pretty appalled as well. So the next turkey I want to talk about is Miss Sheryl Sandberg. Let me see here. So sorry that I'm searching around a little bit, but I'm kind of doing this in between other work projects, and but I definitely wanted to get a word in on this because, you know, Jordan wrote me and he was like, all right, you do this turkey because it infuriates you so much, or this set of turkeys. Alrighty. Let's see here. Which one do I want to look at? So Sheryl Sandberg is the COO of Facebook. And she, you know, she used to be a Hillary Clinton administration official. She's had her hands in politics a lot. So she does a lot of the political end of Facebook. And recently, they have had this big dust up because the New York Times did an expose saying that Sheryl and friends and actually we just found out who actually did the hiring of this firm. But anyway, they hired a firm, a conservative firm called Definers, to essentially smear George Soros with propaganda. And whatever your feelings on George Soros are, it does have an anti-Semitic feel, the way that this is done and the way that this is used. You're probably very aware that a lot of Trump supporters have been using the Soros thing, you know, all those protesters are paid by George Soros. It's all a scam. You know, he's trying to take over the world. And the Jews trying to take over the world trope is incredibly anti-Semitic. And that is where this sort of propaganda, these talking points come from. And it's very shameful and very bad. So again, Facebook is pretty much thought of as being a liberal sort of place. A lot of conservatives feel like they are not listened to, that they don't get a say on Facebook because it's so liberal. Meanwhile, they've hired a very conservative firm called Definers, as I said, to smear George Soros. So we actually don't know absolutely everything about what happened, but George Soros made a comment against Facebook saying very negative things about Facebook. So Definers was told by Facebook employees, okay, find out if there's a financial interest here. Find out if George Soros has a financial interest in saying negative things about Facebook, because God forbid people say negative things about Facebook, right? They're so perfect. They're turkeys is what they are. So we found out that we now have the fall guy. So Sheryl Sandberg, even though she's really, this is her realm of responsibility, our fall guy's name is Elliot Schrage. He is Facebook's outgoing head of communications and policy. So he took responsibility for hiring definers. And he actually put out a memo that is very telling. So Sheryl Sandberg's not going down for this. She's not taking responsibility for any part of this, even though it was found she did an internal audit, or she had her stuff audited to see if anything related to definers had come across her desk. And lo and behold, it had. Oh, what a shocker. But somehow she still didn't know. She's completely innocent. She had emails about definers, and papers had come across her desk about definers, about this hiring decision of this PR firm that used propaganda to smear George Soros. And actually, I didn't go into it, but it turns out that George Soros had given some funding to some social change groups, but that doesn't mean he had a financial incentive to say something negative about Facebook. He said something negative about Facebook because there's negative stuff to say about Facebook. Let's see here. So TechCrunch obtained an internal memo published by Facebook's outgoing head of public policy, Elliot Schrage, in which he blamed himself, aka Facebook made him blame himself, for hiring PR firm definers. He admits to having the company push negative narratives about competitors, but said Facebook did not ask or pay definers to publish fake news. COO Sheryl Sandberg left a comment on the memo, saying it was never Facebook's intention to play into anti-Semitic theories about George Soros. The memo includes a Q&A regarding points raised by a New York Times article detailing how definers work to spread negative publicity about Google and other tech giants to make Facebook look better, and that the firm's employees also published biased articles bashing Facebook's competitors and critics through a news site called NTK Network that's affiliated with definers. In the memo, Schrage justifies the use of opposition research and chastises Facebook employees for allowing internal finger-pointing surrounding its troubled past 2 years to become public. Schrage is kind of an interesting fall guy because he was already stepping down due to the Cambridge Analytica scandal that you're all familiar with, I'm sure, and that I'll go into a little bit about. So he was already gone, so he's the perfect fall guy because no one really has to take true credit for this. No one really has to see any fallback from this. Responsibility for these decisions rests with the leadership of the communications team. That's me. Mark and Sheryl relied on me to manage this without controversy. Wow. I knew and approved of the decision to hire definers and similar firms. I should have known of the decision to expand their mandate. I'm sorry I let you all down. I regret my own failure here. So basically, this explanation protects Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg from further criticism for doing this terrible thing. I mean, they're a social media company. Why are they hiring this firm to push anti-Semitic, rhetoric against George Soros, which is a very right-wing, very Trumpian thing to do? Yeah, I won't go into that anymore, except for Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg seem to be extremely protected from everything bad. They always have a fall guy. They always have an excuse. Same with Campbell Brown. There's always an excuse. There's always a reason. I am actually about to run out of battery power on my computer, so just 1 second. I'm going to plug it in. All right, guys, so sorry about that. So let's get into Cambridge Analytica a little bit. I don't want to go too much into that because it's news that's a little bit older. So Cambridge Analytica is a firm that was essentially, they built an app years ago, and I think in 2015. And they were collecting user data. And in fact, so it was this personality test. People would take a personality test, and then the app would actually gather information also about the user's friends. So they would get the people who took this personality test, they would get their information as well as the information of friends of the people who had taken this test. So that was a major, major, major problem, because now Cambridge Analytica, which Steve Bannon had a very big role in that. It was funded by Robert Mercer. You've seen that name over and over and over again. Yeah, so a lot of data points to the fact that Cambridge Analytica's meddling, yeah, I would call it meddling. They used, I think it was 50 million users. They had this data on what essentially would be their voting behavior. And they were able to use that to, a lot of people think, influence decisions like Brexit and the winning of Trump. So this has been a major deal, and Mark Zuckerberg is a giant turkey. First of all, for this to even be possible, he's also a giant turkey because he's dodging hearings on this. There's supposed to be this meeting of 7 countries, including Canada and the UK, and they wanted Mark Zuckerberg there to answer questions. And he can't make it, so he's sending his VP of something instead. And, he owns 60% of Facebook. He is the chairman. He basically makes all the decisions. There's really no true oversight of Facebook. They do what they want. They get away with what they want, whether it's suppressing news, whether it's suppressing voices, whether it's stealing or making available user data that ends in terrible consequences, and whether it's hiring PR firms to smear Jewish people. It's becoming more and more alarming, and there's no accountability there. And Mark Zuckerberg, giant, terrible turkey, pretending to be liberal, pretending to be for the people, but meanwhile just making excuses when they make big, big, big screw-ups. Actually, it's very interesting because a firm or a company is in a legal battle with Facebook right now. And as part of that, I guess as part of discovery, there were, I think it's 11,000 documents or some crazy number of documents that have been made available through this. And because the company owner was in the UK, I think it's one of the MPs actually was able to get those documents, was able to, I don't know if subpoena is the right word, but was able to get a hold of all of those documents, including internal emails from Zuckerberg and others. So we'll see what comes of that. But meanwhile, the people can't stand for this. The people can't stand for Facebook being the arbiter of what is real news. And who are they to determine that anyway? They are not in a position to determine what's real and what's not real, and what's acceptable and not acceptable. They are suppressing real voices. They are screwing up. They have had effects on our elections and the elections and decisions of other countries in a very negative way. They have people at the helm who, I'm sorry, like, if you are married to Dan Senor, you're a bad person. Speaking of Campbell Brown. So these 3 turkeys, Sheryl Sandberg, Campbell Brown, Mark Zuckerberg, they are giant, giant, gobble, gobble turkeys. And something needs to be done about it. There needs to be more oversight. All right, that's all I have for you right now. I'm going to get to my other work, and I hope you enjoy and stick around for the rest of this live stream. Remember to become a member if you can. We really are excited about our new membership area, and talk to you all later.